So a big shout out to Saber Spark because I recently watched, mostly completed, his latest video where he talked about Unicorn Wars. Now, I didn't know exactly what he was going to be talking about when I saw the thumbnail, but when he had the title in that thumbnail saying this is not for kids, and it had a bear on there whose face was half deformed, basically half wiped out. I'm thinking to myself, what is this, right? So I tune in, and then that's when I find out about Unicorn Wars and, how it came to be. And honestly, I will say this. Saber Spark is right about one thing. This is a movie that's allegory, when it comes to talking about how devastating war can be and how it can change us no matter how we represent ourselves, especially if we're involved in it, if you will. That the allegory utilized by using cutesy little Care Bear, MLP like characters in the bears and unicorns, who, by the way, a lot of fans still associate with MLP, even with G5. To use it in that manner and show that even the most beautiful, like unicorns are sometimes looked at as beautiful and everything, to use it in that manner to show that even the beauty there can be turned ugly and everything because of war and what it does to us. I'll be honest, and I think Saber Spark hit it on the nose in a way that it's not something you would have expected. You would have expected a movie like this, animated or not, to be mostly humans, and show how basically show how the situation of war, basically how it can change us, can be very reflective, on each other. But, the thing is, like I said, Saber pointed it on the nose. It's like none of us would have expected, what's the guy's name, Alberto, to make the movie the way he did with these characters being put in that position. I mean, you don't expect that. Now, I will say this. Nowadays, when you mostly see cutesy-like characters like Care Bear-like parodies being utilized in adult animation, is basically to make a mockery of what they represent. Or they're brought in to basically be slaughtered and mutilated and everything because of what they represent. You don't expect something like this. You don't expect something like this. You don't expect something so violent, horrific, mature, dramatic, psychedelic. I mean, you don't expect something on the levels, I wouldn't say mostly of heavy metal, but it feels very close to that in many ways. I mean, we all know that heavy metal, if you will, heavy metal back in the early 80s, and including its sequel, but mostly the original, really surprised people with its, not just its stunning animation, but what it represented, what it brought to the dance. And, to me, I look at something like Unicorn Wars, and I can truly say that if we were looking for a heavy metal of the 21st century, of the 2020s, I think we may have just found it. I think Unicorn Wars might be, as crazy as it sounds, the heavy metal of 2022, 2023. No joke. No joke. It feels like it's, it feels like it has assumed that position, if you will, of being the movie from over 40 years ago. It feels like it is now that movie of today. It does. I mean, Saber Spark basically said there was stuff in the film when he was showing highlights of it he could not show. He could not show because not of its graphicness. No. Because of the fact, ladies and gentlemen, there is nudity. And you have to be careful with that kind of stuff. Believe me. Believe me, you have to be careful, because I'll give you an example. One of the videos I put up last week, that little compilation video of the submerged sinking animated females, if you will, with a compilation of several CGI SFM renders of iconic, or I guess you could say well-renowned animated females in the past, decade or so, and being submerged, sinking and being submerged willingly into a gooey substance. I had to edit around that because parts of it had nudity, and I don't want to take a chance with YouTube, But anyway, to get back to what Saber Spark was saying, he couldn't show any other highlights outside of what he could because of the graphicness, in its nature, and potential graphicness in its sexuality representation. Here's the thing. I haven't seen Unicorn Wars myself yet, and I probably will eventually. Heck, I do know this. I plan to get Unicorn Wars when it physically comes out to Blu-ray in May. That's what I plan to do. Yes, digitally it's available to rent right now. In several weeks, digitally it'll be available to purchase. There's no doubt. But me, I'm not just going to do that, but I'm also going to physically buy a copy of that film. Why? Because not only is G Kids distributing it, digitally and physically, and it would add to my G Kids anime collection, if you will, but I also consider it to be an anime the way it's designed, the way it comes across, even though it's from another country, or several other countries, that being France and Spain. So I have no problem looking at it as anime because of the way, at least anime from a few other countries, I have no problem looking at it as an anime inspired by what they see in Japan, but brought over to the western side of the world, thanks to the likes of France and Spain. I have no problem putting it under the anime category because of that. I really don't. I really don't. But to me, when I look at this, I'm like, I'm surprised. I'm surprised by, what is, showcased here. And that alone to me is worth not only adding it to the collection, but at least giving it one view. At least one view, because of the uniqueness, the craziness that it brings to the table. In fact, one person in their YouTube review video that they did on it, which I haven't watched yet, but one person basically said in the title of the video, it's a fever dream. And it just might be because, Saber Spark basically said that the ending is what really throws anybody off because of what happens at the end. And the ending is kind of very horror-like. In fact, when you go to YouTube, and YouTube now allows you to purchase or rent movies, right? And it has and they have them categorized in certain genres, right? Well, Unicorn Wars, according to YouTube, is categorized as horror. And yeah, I could say it does fall under that, especially when you look at the ending, because the ending is very, I guess you could say, horror related or horror inspired, if you will. But outside of its inspiration, the ending that is, what we see afterwards is like, okay, what message are you giving us here, right? With what occurs afterwards as we end the movie. What message are you giving us here? What are you saying? And that's why I think this one guy put in his title when he's reviewing Unicorn Wars, it's a fever dream. Because when you get down to it, ladies and gentlemen, basically, that is kind of what it is. Yes, it's an allegory of how devastating war can be, on any person, no matter how you are viewed. Whether you're viewed as beautiful or cutesy or adorable or whatever, or representing being one with nature, war could change you in unexpected, disturbing ways. Yes. So yes, the allegory is there. The allegory there represents that war could change you no matter how you're viewed at or view yourself in unexpected, despicable, devastating, disturbing ways. There's no doubt. But when you add in the abstractness, the psychedelicness sometimes, because of that one scene or so, and other scenes probably related to it, and you add that in there, and then you add the ending, and all that. It's like, okay, we get the allegory, we get the message about how devastating war can be and how it changes you in a disturbing way, no matter how you're viewed or how you view yourself. But it's like, what is the ending supposed to represent, right? What is the ending representing? I mean, it's one thing to, incorporate maybe the fact that, well, they kind of do, but not really. I mean, one of the allegories that they try to send a message about is, the manipulation of religion. Like whatever religion you believe in, whether it's Christianity, Christianity, Buddhism, you name it, whatever. What's the other one? Christianity, Buddhism, Catholic, Jehovah's Witness, you name it. Whichever religion you follow, you have to be careful of being of the manipulation that the person that you're listening to, that's supposed to be like this, who not supposed to be, but presents themselves as this hierarchy of that religion, or hierarchy representation of that religion. You have to be careful of how you hear the message they're giving to you. Because the message could be very manipulative. The message could be very, could basically be very, like, hey, this is not what the Bible says. This is not what, the good book says. So you have to, it is an allegory that you have to be careful of the manipulation of the religious texts and all that by those that feel, they have the higher anarchy and power to make it, to make you listen and make you believe that this is how it's supposed to go, when you pretty much could read, the Bible, all the good book, or whatever religious text you read and believe in, and it says otherwise. So I can understand the allegory of, okay, war can change you no matter how you view yourself or others view you. I understand the allegory of, be careful about listening to people's manipulation of the good word, depending on your religion. But again, the ending is just mind-boggling. Because we know that apparently there's a prophecy and everything, and we don't know if that got fulfilled, and what we see at the end is the result. We don't know. We don't know, but it is one of those situations, ladies and gentlemen, it is one of those situations that when you look at this film, or you hear people talk about it, and it gets you intrigued, like it's got me intrigued, thanks to Saberspark. You yourself are going to want to see it probably once, maybe twice, to try to figure out, maybe even multiple times, who knows, to try to figure out and piece together, okay, what is the meaning of all this? Where does this all connect? How does it all connect, if you will, in the long run? You see, that is what this kind of movie does to you, especially if you haven't seen it, but others have. It makes you want to watch it so that you, unlike them, could try to piece together what the meaning is. It makes you want to do that. Not only because of, what it represents, the message, the allegory of the messages that I've just talked about of, how war can change you and being deceived by the manipulation of the good word, word from what it's originally supposed to say and what somebody's presenting to you, what they say it says, and all that. Despite getting an understanding of that allegory of messages on both those fronts, outside of that, you want to know exactly, okay, what does this all represent? It's like what is the end? What is the message at the end? What does the ending represent? What is this? Oh, it's like, where do the pieces come together? Where do the pieces fit together to where we could figure out when it's all said and done and we watch the entire film and we see that ending? Where does it all fit in that we can say to ourselves, okay, now we get it. Now we know where it makes sense. Now we see the connection and why this ending is presented the way it is. A movie like this, when you hear other people talk about it, like Saber Spark and many others, it intrigues you to want to see it yourself. And like I said, it's possibly just see it once, because maybe you can get it just on one viewing, maybe twice, maybe, multiple times. But, it makes you want to see it so that at least when you watch it on your first try, your second try, your third try, you can at least get that understanding of, okay, I get it. I see what the message is. I see what this is all about. I see I understand what that ending represents and what we're seeing represents. That's what this movie does. It really does. And again, the same could be said for what I said it's the equivalent of here in 2023, heavy metal. We had an anthology of stories sewn throughout heavy metal, but they all had one connective continuity, and none of us really got it until after multiple, I guess you could say, viewings, and some of us did get the ending. Some of us did get the ending and the idea of, oh, okay, hey, now it makes sense. Now we see, what the message is. Now we see what it all ties together. It feels like it's it feels like it's in that category, and why I say it's the heavy metal of this year, because again, like I said, heavy metal took multiple viewings before people got the idea and got the, kind of pieced it all together and figured out, okay, now we see how this all connects, and why this now kind of makes sense. Heck, Revolutionary Girl Utena, or Utena, if you will. But Revolutionary Girl Utena, the movie, which is based off the manga, which is based off the anime series. Basically, it's a reboot of all that condensed into one film. Nobody understood basically the reason why Utena, turned into a car towards the end of the film. Nobody did. But over multiple viewings and hearing what others have had to say about it, and also taking what the director behind the film in his commentary said as well, we finally were able to piece all the things together. That basically Utena became the vehicle that Anthe needed, to leave the academy and to go into the real world. She was the vehicle that once they professed the love for each other and professed the fact that they both wanted the same thing, the person that was needed, or not just needed. All right. Almost got tongue-tied, but like I said, the person that was basically being pushed as the vehicle to, help Anthe in the long run, became that vehicle for her to drive herself out. And it took Anthe the courage to realize, yes, this is what I want to do. Because we see that after Utena turns into a car, she starts to rust and fall apart. But why? Because Anthe has not made her decision. And what she has in her hand that was once the rose ring is now a rose key. And that without placing the key into Utena as a car, she's basically stating she has not made up her mind. But when she starts remembering, exactly what was told to her before, she realizes that, yes, this is my decision. I want to do this. She puts the key into Utena, if you will, in her car mode, and takes off. And it's during the drive, during the race, if you will, that we see Utena also evolve in car form from the form she initially has to a more sleeker sports car-like form that goes faster, that gets them out of there. And then we see the final evolution when, when the ghost guy, ghost brother of Anthony, if you will, or whatever he is, tries to keep them there. And Anthony is like, no, I'm not going to do this, despite the fact that Utena as a car is being broken down into pieces to a skeleton. It's being broken down to her skeleton structure, if you will. The last form of that evolution is them saying, to revolutionize the world, and they're pushing forward, and that's when you see, Utena's back to human form, but naked, along with Anthony now, and they're now riding off on what remains of the Utena car, on top of it making out as they're going into the real world, into the unknown to begin a new life. And like I said, despite the fact that took several viewings and taking what the director said in his commentary about it into context, and then hearing what other people have had to say throughout the years, people did finally get the idea. They finally got the message. Some even got it right off the bat, like, oh, we get it now. We see what the message is. But outside of that, it took people like me multiple viewings, multiple understandings, from other people that have seen it, as well as the commentary from the director, to get that message of, Utena becoming a car represented being Anthony's vehicle, to go into the outside world. In fact, we could even say that throughout the film, that's what she was becoming. She was becoming the vehicle, for Anthony to go into the outside world. And the final 3 steps, I think final 4 steps basically for that to happen, was for Utena to become the literal vehicle for her to drive in, for Anthony to drive her, for her to become an evolved form of the vehicle, a more sleeker, faster, more powerful version, and then Anthony to say what she said. And I know I talked about that a little longer than I should have, but the point is you kind of understand it now as it relates to the entire film. So when you look at something like Unicorn Wars here, you're like, basically, what is the meaning? It's like you get, like I said, the allegories and the message of how war could change you no matter how people view you or you view yourself. We understand the allegory and the message of, don't let somebody manipulate, the words of the good book, of the Bible, of your text of belief and religion in a manner that manipulates you and makes you believe what they want you to believe. We get that and everything. But it's the ending. Does the ending represent the fulfilling of a prophecy that's talked about at the beginning? Or is it just something more that just came out of nowhere? What is it? We don't know. And I guarantee you, it's going to take, for some it will take maybe just one viewing, okay? But for others, it will take, 2 viewings, 3 viewings, multiple viewings, to figure it out themselves, to figure out, okay, what does this represent? And after maybe 2 viewings, 3 viewings, multiple viewings, they will get it. I guarantee you that's what's going to happen. They will get it. I mean, Saber Spark even sounded like he didn't even get it during his review. It's like he was trying to guess, okay, is this what it means? Is that what it means? Is this the prophecy fulfilled? Even he wasn't sure. Even he wasn't sure. So for a movie to do that, to me, did its job. It did its job in getting you intrigued and everything to want to see it after other people have seen it and are talking about it. it's gotten you intrigued to try to figure out, the overall message yourself, because now you want to view it, you want to see it, you want to add it, as a part of your collection down the line, so you can watch it as many times as you want to try to figure out that message, to try to figure out what this fever dream, as that one person said in his YouTube title video, in the title of his YouTube video, this fever dream of a movie, has to offer, what it's about. So, to me, it did its job, just like heavy metal, in my opinion, did its job back in the early 80s and everything, and got people wondering for years exactly what the message was, the allegory message was of that film. And finally, after maybe 2 viewings, 3 viewings, multiple viewings, people finally got it. And that's not a joke. That's not a lie either. But yeah, Unicorn Wars to me is definitely one I am going to be checking out. Look, I could rent it, there's no doubt, but I'm not going to rent it. I'm going to wait till it comes out on digital and physically to get this film. I really am. Because to me, it did its job on me. It got me invested. It got me intrigued to want to see exactly what this film is all about, and why even someone like Saberspark can't, even in his own review, can't even figure out what the message or what the ending of this film, is. Is it a representation of the message that was given? Or not the message, but the prophecy that was given at the start of the film? What is it? We don't know. But I'll tell you this, it's got me intrigued. I'll tell you right now, I'll tag him here. It's going to have Frank Hill intrigued and everything. It's going to have, Patrick Butler intrigued. It will have Zara Nizrak intrigued of Multimedia Chronicles. I guarantee you, it'll get them intrigued because of, I'll tell you right now, I'll tell you, if this is not what I look at as the heavy metal of 2023, 40 years plus after the first one, I don't know what is. I don't know what is, honestly. But to me, this did its job, because if it's got people reviewing it like Saberspark, even still confused about its ending, it did its job. It did its job. But let me know what your guys' thoughts are. Let me know if any of you have seen Unicorn Wars. Let me know if any of you have seen Unicorn Wars. What are your thoughts on it? How did you feel about it? What do you think, it represents overall with its ending, if you've seen it, all that? Let me know down below and in the live chat during the premiere. Like the video. You will get an audio podcast version of this at BW Roses Productions. Not production, but discussions, I should say, not discussion. BW Roses Discussions, I should say. You will get an audio version of this, there to listen to whenever you want. More specifically, I recommend listening to it on Spotify. That helps me out in the long run, too. Also, ladies and gentlemen, you can click on the upper left-hand corner if you're watching on YouTube. Excuse me. If you're watching on YouTube, you can click on the upper left-hand corner at the end screen here to check out my Teespring store for merchandise you can't get anywhere else. Also, ladies and gentlemen, check me out at deviantart.com. It says BVW 1979. For stuff there you can't find anywhere else, artistically. Also, ladies and gentlemen, check me out at VENMO at BW Roses for content you can't get anywhere else, especially due to copyright reasons and for other reasons, when it comes to YouTube. Also, check me out at patreon.com, says BW Roses. Support me with a $1 or $3 tier. Also, ladies and gentlemen, check me out at Venmo at Brian-Walmer-2 and Cash App at BW Roses 98. It'll help me out tremendously financially there if you can do that. But yeah, guys, to me, Unicorn Wars did its job. It's got me invested to want to see it and everything. Big shout out, like I said, to Saberspark for reviewing it and giving his thoughts on it, because even he's still confused by that ending. So big shout out to him. Also, let me know what your guys' thoughts are and everything and all that. But yeah, big shout out to Saberspark for doing the review. It's got me invested, and I'm sure it's going to get a lot of people invested. And to me, I still look at this as the heavy metal equivalent of 2023, basically being what heavy metal was then in the 1980s, early 80s. I think that's what Unicorn Wars is now. But let me know what your thoughts are, guys. And until next time, I will talk to y'all later.